Hi there, everybody, and welcome to the third and final day of TheGrill 2020. I'm Sharon Waxman. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of TheWrap, and I'm so excited to bring you a wonderful lineup today after 2 days of fascinating conversations where we touched on streaming, the future of media, the future of film, theatrical distribution, film festivals, producing, all of those core things, and of course, 2 amazing roundtables talking about making diversity and inclusion a permanent part of our industry. Today, we're looking at innovation, and we'll be exploring that across a whole bunch of different panels and different parts of the industry. We're kicking it off today with a close look at gaming called Gaming Next Level. That'll be followed by the power of podcasts at 1 o'clock with some leading thinkers about this exploding part of the media business. Then at 2 o'clock, I'll be talking to the writer and the director of a new documentary that's causing a lot of talk out there. It's called The Social Dilemma. The writer-director is Jeff Orlovsky, and the film deals with the dangers and challenges to society and democracy that social media has brought. We're going to round out today with a fascinating conversation at 5:30 with members of TheWrap's Innovators List. That's where we published that about 2 days ago, and that's where we choose the leading individuals and companies who are bringing innovation into entertainment and media. We'll have with us live top executives from Wave, Cameo, FaZe Clan, Triller, and others. So please join us. You have the daily itinerary with links to each of these sessions in your email that arrived at about 9 a.m. this morning. So please go there for links to all our sessions and join us also on our Slack channel at 2:30 today to talk and network among yourselves. Before we dive into our panel conversation today, I'm really pleased to bring you a presentation from researcher Yoshio Osaki. He's going to outline the current state of play in the gaming business, which many of you know has exploded during the pandemic. Yoshio is the president and the CEO of IDG Consulting, a leading research consulting and analytics firm in the games market. For more than 15 years, Yoshio has been a trusted advisor, investor, and thought leaders to the top global companies, including Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Sony, Take-Two. I really don't know if I can name all the companies because it's pretty much every single gaming company out there, EA, Activision, Blizzard, Epic Games, Riot Games, etc., all of them. Yoshio's been at TheGrill before, and we are really delighted to welcome him back. Welcome, Yoshio.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Sharon. And the partnership with TheWrap has been a very important one over the years. So we have a lot of data to get through in a short amount of time. So let's dig right in. As many of you know, gaming has become top of mind and has become much more mainstream in the last 5 to 10 years. But what's happened since March, obviously, with the onset of COVID-19 and the global pandemic, is that while a lot of industries have suffered and there's been a lot of disruption and change, sometimes to the downside, gaming has been one of the true beneficiaries during shelter in place. And what we've seen is when you compare gaming against other entertainment categories, gaming is literally eating up entertainment. 2020 is going to be the inflection year where we actually see gaming surpass all of the other entertainment verticals in the market. And by 2024, 5 years from today, we actually anticipate gaming to surpass the $250 billion threshold. Where's that upside coming from? For us as analysts, what we're seeing in the market is triple-barreled upside. So you have 3 major platforms in gaming, of course, PC, mobile, and console. And we're seeing growth across all 3 platforms over the next 5 years. You have for console next gen with PS5 and Xbox Series X, both launching this November. Mobile has really democratized the playing field, no pun intended. And obviously that's a $100 billion market already. And PC has continued to show strength and resilience, both in the East and in the West. One other big theme that we have been looking into as analysts and researchers is the potential impact of the recessionary environment where we currently see ourselves in, not just here in the US, but throughout the world more globally. And in the last big recession in 2008, 2009, gaming did take a bit of a step back because of some of the consumer headwinds that we saw during that time. By contrast, this time around, what we actually anticipate is that while some of the retail segments within gaming will see some headwinds, digital console software, digital distribution accelerating due to COVID and due to some other big fundamental changes in the infrastructure of the games market, we're actually going to see gaming emerge as recession resistant and to some extent recession proof. What is the big success factor driving this growth? So a lot of people talk very often about gaming content, productization, and of course, brands becoming much more powerful within gaming and within esports. But another hidden ingredient for success has been innovation in business models. And gaming has become the lead indicator. A lot of our clients now are coming from other parts of the entertainment market, music, movies, home entertainment, because they're seeing some of these new monetization drivers in gaming as really innovative gatekeepers to broader growth in the market. And so this is just an example here of some of the major monetization mechanics that we see in gaming that are popular today. And we did some consumer insights research that tapped into the psychographics that drove purchase intent against each of those 8 different business models. This is a very busy slide, so if you can drill down into it a little bit more, that would be helpful here. Thank you for that. When we look at the gaming ecosystem today, there are 2 somewhat conflicting trends that are at play. On the one hand, everything is moving more in a cross-platform direction. But at the same time, everybody, including publishers for games, want to have their own platform ecosystems. They want to have their own moats. They want to own the user economics. They want to own the user data. And so what we're showing here with this rubric is just how fragmented and complex the games ecosystem is today. If I want to have access to all of my games content, I might need to literally have 12 different user account logins and have access to 4 or 5 different devices. But content is not the only king, and nor is business models. The other big key to the success of gaming in the last 5 years and its continued strength over the next 5 is the longevity of brands. So often you might see a big brand like Star Wars or Lucas that's doing really well with certain brands in theatrical or in TV. Marvel is a great example of that. But in gaming, I think an underplayed theme is the fact that there are certain brands that have actually stood the test of time, literally. So if you look at Super Mario, for example, the Mario Brothers franchise is now just celebrated its 35th anniversary. You also have brands like Zelda at almost at over 30 years. Madden is 26 years old, and on down the line. So if you look at some of these tentpole game franchises on this slide, what we find is that the average mean is 16 years. So a lot of these gaming brands have become much more evergreen, and I think that says a lot about the sustainability for the future. Another thing to keep in mind, and Adrian is going to be talking through this with us much more, as well as Johanna when it comes to esports, is that esports during COVID actually became somewhat of a substitute for traditional sports. When the traditional athletes were sidelined across soccer, baseball, basketball, racing, a lot of them turned to esports. And that was also a great consumer substitute from an entertainment perspective. Esports in this vein is also leveling up. It's no longer about immature, transactional, short-term goals. A lot of the partnerships have really evolved and become much more, mature and much more focused on long-term sustainable partnerships that are win-wins for all parties involved. Another way of looking at the market is at the community level. Ross and I have talked about this in the past, where gaming in some ways is emerging as more of a social media 3.0 mechanism. People are spending time in games like Fortnite, not just to play their game, but watching Travis Scott with 28 million peak concurrent users for a 12-minute live stream concert. And finally, gaming is going to remain a huge opportunity. We just saw the news, Microsoft buying Bethesda a few days ago for 7.5 billion, Tencent a few years ago buying Supercell for 10 billion. We're going to continue to see more investment, M&A, and IPOs. Unity, $13.8 billion IPO just a few days ago. But we also have some other catalysts, next-gen consoles, cloud gaming and streaming, emerging subscription models such as Stadia or xCloud and Game Pass from Microsoft, and also transmedia successes from The Witcher on into gaming, but gaming then going back into a very popular Netflix program. So there are a lot of trends to be excited by, a lot of different areas for us to explore. And with that, I'd like to throw it back to Sharon.
Fantastic. Well, that was a lot of really good information. Kind of amazing how much things have changed already. So I think now's the right time to bring on our panel so we can talk about some of these issues. Welcome, first of all, to Ross Gerber, who's the co-founder, president, and CEO of Gerber Kawasaki, one of the most prominent investors working today, and a friend, I'm going to say. Ross oversees the firm's corporate and investment management operations in addition to serving individual clients. He also has a wicked Twitter account. Welcome. Joanna Ferris is the commissioner of Call of Duty League for Activision Blizzard, Inc., overseeing the league and business operations, product development, and general management of Call of Duty esports globally. In her role, Joanna has led the formation of the new global city-based league, which is in its inaugural season. It includes 12 professional teams in 4 countries. She's also a sports industry veteran. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you.
And finally, Adrian Montgomery, he's the CEO of Enthusiast Gaming, which recently purchased Omnia Media for $38 million. Before that, Adrian was a senior officer and director of several public and private companies in the fields of media, sports, entertainment, finance, and industrial services. Welcome to you, Adrian. So let's jump on in here. I think, and Yoshio's here. Stay, Yoshio. Don't leave.
I'm staying. I'm not going.
Okay.
We need it.
Lots of great stuff to talk about here. I'll just point out that Yoshio and Ross were both at our gaming. We launched gaming as a category for us to explore at TheGrill kind of officially last fall, and sort of made a commitment to look at this really important multi-billion-dollar industry that's part of entertainment. None of us expected it was going to explode like this. Joanna, we wanted to have you there, and we're so glad to have you here today. Why don't you address some of the things that Yoshio brought up in his research, which is this explosion in gaming during COVID. And of course, Call of Duty is one of the leading games that has just kind of taken up a lot of people's time. And you were smart enough, or maybe lucky enough, I don't know, to introduce Warzone, a new game, during right at the start of the lockdown, pretty much, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything Yoshio said is 100% correct. I think I was seeing that even when I had left my 12 years at the NFL, really started to look at this space and understood that it was becoming more mature. The business models, the operating models, the streaming models, how do people actually put form and fashion around what has typically been consumer-driven grassroots, especially on the esports side, is now really becoming these big platforms for engagement, and engagement with a capital E, however we want to define that, whether it's a live event in sold out arenas, whether that's a, remote broadcast with people having to do that, from their bedrooms all over a continent. It's just really fascinating what's happening with the space, given the technology that's informing how we can pivot, even in light of a pandemic. So yeah, I would just underscore everything that was shared in that research. I'd also say that Call of Duty in particular, Sharon, has experienced what I even feel is a little bit of a renaissance for a 17-year-old brand, right? I think we all have been really impressed and excited to see that it went, live on mobile back in the fall, less than a year ago. It was about 100+ million downloads, and it's just initial first few days. It just speaks to the global resonance of not just mobile, but an established brand coming together on that new way to play. You had incredible performance with Modern Warfare as a mainline title. You then came back in the spring, somewhat interestingly, to your point, back in March with Freetoplay and Warzone. And then you had this launch of a city-based structured model for esports that's very much akin to what we were doing at the NFL or the NBA in the Call of Duty League all at once. So it's been a little bit of a new groundswell, I think, for where we can take it, because it's exciting to me in and of itself as a league and where that league is going to go, just given where these models are starting to mature. But when you surround sound that with the mega brand that is Call of Duty, I think it's just a really hot time for us to be in this space.
Really amazing. Also, I want to invite everybody, please jump in. This is not a polite conversation. Everybody can jump in at any point. And I mean, I think let's talk about esports, because, we had a whole focus on it last year when we talked. Now, this idea of esports replacing live sports, actual sports. Adrian, talk about what Enthusiast Gaming is focused on in this space. And the topic of monetization comes up over and over again. Has that has that code been cracked, or is it being cracked?
It is being cracked for sure. I think COVID certainly helped, as was mentioned in the presentation. I think the other thing that happened during COVID was that esports made a quantum leap forward as a viable betting property and a gambling property, and nothing amplifies the popularity of traditional sports more than the fact that there's a lot of people that place wagers. And so in the absence of traditional sports, there's no days off when you're a bettor, and you need something to bet on. And so I think that was hugely advantageous.
Adrian, where are they betting through? Are you talking about betting through traditional gambling apps like DraftKings?
Yeah, Nevada licensed esports betting during the pandemic. I believe New Jersey did as well. And so they're using traditional apps like Pinnacle, et cetera.
Has there been real volume of gaming, betting on gaming?
Yeah, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that. I don't have the hard data. Certainly Pinnacle talks about it. I don't think there's a CNBC interview that the CEO of DraftKings does where he doesn't talk about esports being a huge growth area for his business. And there's a lot of encouraging data when it comes to betting that esports bettors also convert to traditional sports bettors when they're on the same platform. So some encouraging trends are emerging for sure.
There's another trend that ties in with that is skins betting. So in a lot of the major games that have also emerged as esports, there are skins that are tied to your character avatar, your champion in a game. And so there's this secondary microeconomy around people wagering in actual gameplay, wagering skins as sort of a secondary virtual currency. And in our research, unofficially, because it's really hard to track this dollar for dollar, CSGO alone, the skins betting ecosystem is estimated to be somewhere between 750 million to about $1 billion per year. And it's become a huge engagement driver within a lot of these competitive titles.
Yeah, we've taken a big position in the MGM hotels in Vegas recently on the betting side of the business, as well as it's cheap. But I'm when is it going to be where I can bet $20 to see what place I come in Battle Royale on Call of Duty? Because I would like to bet, obviously not on myself, but you could bet on other players in game on who's going to win the game, basically. And I think there's a whole nother element of potential revenue from a betting perspective in gaming, just having the games be for profit, basically like DraftKings, but you're playing, You
guys like that revenue stream better than sort of either advertising?
Ads is such a tough business. Ads is tough. You know that. Everybody's going for the same ad dollars in every business, so I like transactional business on top of ad business,
The only thing I'd add to that too is even in our postseason, as an example, just getting to advertising, but more effective ways to drive recall and engagement. We had, a few partners started to, instead of just do a billboard of, okay, I'm going to buy this much inventory, and if I flash my brand enough times across our broadcasts, something will happen with the consumer. They really started to say, if this happens in the game, you're going to get free Grubhub or free Chipotle, right? And we thought, okay, we'll test it.
That's huge. That's where I see the future for sure.
Tremendous.
Like, why aren't advertisers in the game? Like when I'm playing Call of Duty and I run through a gas station or something shooting, why aren't they real gas stations and like real brands in the games? Why can't you interact with those brands? So I think there's so much opportunity there.
Well, that sounds complicated. That sounds complicated to me, but I'm not a game designer. I don't know. Adrian, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that advertising, the huge opportunity with gaming and with esports also is a different form of advertising, which is the fastest growing form of marketing spend in the world, which is influencer-based marketing and advertising. Young people do not consume content and make an advertiser's job easy like I did 20 years ago when me and 30 million of my best pals watched an episode of Seinfeld. It's very hard to find young people, but all of us on this panel know where they are. They're playing games, and statistically, they are highly, highly influenced in their purchase behavior by the people that they follow on social media. Right. Kim Kardashian is a billionaire for a reason, Kylie Jenner, et cetera, et cetera. It's because when they market a product, their followers go out and buy that product. And guess what? The biggest influencers, 5 of the biggest 10 influencers on YouTube are gamers. The biggest influencers and the biggest celebrities of today and tomorrow are influencers. And that's where brands want to spend their money. And that's what's so encouraging. So it's not traditional awareness, billboard ads on websites. It's influencer marketing that could be the engine of tremendous growth here.
But that's money for the influencers. That's not money for the games.
No, it's for the games too, because like my kids watch this Unspeakable and they play Minecraft, and like this guy Unspeakable is a genius. I mean, they've built this amazing YouTube channel, but they're selling all kinds of products and the game. So the kids learn from these influencers how to play the game better, and then they also want to interact with the products. And these guys are making millions streaming basically videos how to play these games in a way. But the whole future of advertising is 100% agree with that concept. And actually what Enthusiast Gaming is doing by building a social community around gaming is a very smart business, because our theory is gaming is really social media now. Like Facebook's cancer. I'd much rather have my kids playing Minecraft than be on Facebook. So
really?
It's like,
are you serious?
We have,
I mean,
at Enthusiast, and thank you for the nice words. Across our websites and our YouTube channels and our sports teams, we have 300 million unique monthly viewers, ComScore verified. That's a huge audience. What's really interesting, half of those viewers don't use Facebook. They don't use
Facebook.
How do you that's in the analytics? Like you?
That's in the analytics. That's in the research. They don't use Facebook, and so what Yoshio said, which I think is the single most important fact about this industry. A lot of people are middle-aged. They remember that make decisions in corporate America. They remember gaming as being the most antisocial binary activity. But guess what? If you just graduated from USC and you went back home to Cincinnati and your buddy stayed in LA and your other buddy went to Michigan, you stayed in touch, not by going on Facebook, by messaging each other and saying, let's play Call of Duty tonight. And that's where you catch up. That is the most appealing factor about the growth potential of this industry that a lot of people miss.
I wanted to say one thing.
Sure.
I think that you guys have pointed out something that I really think we need to write about at TheWrap. We have, as I said at the top of this, this director of this movie called The Social Dilemma coming on later, which everybody's talking about.
It's a great movie. It's great. He did a great job.
Very good
film and interesting, talking about the things that those of us who are in this every day know about, but it's putting it together. People are now crystallizing this. The idea that gaming is an alternative to social media and a not less toxic environment, but that accomplishes that thing that people need, which is connection, to me feels like a really important.
Oh, it's huge. This is our whole investment thesis, Sharon. Our investment thesis is gaming is the new social media. Yeah. That is the investment thesis. Okay. So I'll give you an example. Like when I go on Twitter, if I tweet anything, I will be attacked by a million people who say horrible things and a million people who love me. But if you do that on Call of Duty, you can push one button and report a player and they're booted. The way that they've protected the community from the harassment and the attacks, while the social media community has done nothing to protect anybody about any of the harassment, hate, and all this stuff. So the fact that you can run a game where you shoot other people and have this be a safe place for your kids to communicate is a tremendous feat for the gaming communities and companies like Activision, because honestly, like, it's a safe place to play.
Joanna,
Yeah,
you go, Yoshi, but then I'd like Joanna to weigh in on that, please. Yeah, go ahead, Yoshi.
Yeah, just to connect the dots real quick, we advised this one startup that is actually building out branded in-game items that can be transferred platform to platform, game to game. And part of why this never happened is, to Adrian's point, that a lot of these brands, they're a little bit out of step and out of touch with the Gen Z millennials, the influencer and creator part of the ecosystem. And those Gen Z millennial consumers are the same people who are not watching linear TV or consuming traditional media. And to Ross's point, and it reinforces what Johanna said earlier, the community management angle and looking at gaming not only as social media 3.0, but also as a community engagement model is the right way to look at it going forward. Because even people who aren't playing games, so I'm a relatively new dad, but even when I'm playing games, thanks, Ross, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. So when I'm playing with my niece, when I'm spending time with my nieces today, we're watching people on Twitch, or we're watching content on YouTube, or we're watching a South Korean esports team playing against a Romanian team in Call of Duty or in Overwatch, or whatever the case may be. And so it's also becoming much more of instead of an antisocial stigma, to Adrian's earlier point, it's now become one of the only socially acceptable ways of engaging and spending time and money on entertainment, especially in the age of COVID.
Yeah, I would build on both of those points. I think what is really interesting to me personally about the esports vector is when that sits on top, it actually reinforces everything that Ross and Yoshio just said. Now I can also convene not just with my buddies from different states every night, but when Call of Duty League comes to town, we can actually make a pilgrimage, spend 3 days together, seeing the best of the best, right? The LeBron James of Call of Duty and all of his buddies on a stage for a pretty, nominal price, all things being equal, and convene with everybody else in that manner who loves the game that I love. It's a highly positive experience. And I think even I fell into the trap before I made the jump, thinking it was not. I thought I was going to walk into an arena and feel that kind of toxicity, or you don't belong here, or it's nothing like that. It is so wide open space for gathering, both virtually and then to reinforce it at the live level is really cool.
I think your point is really important too, because this is what Tesla's done so well. Like, I was just up there and the community is like so passionate about Tesla. And that's the same with gaming, where people love Call of Duty. And I used to love going to E3 in the old days, and you'd go to E3 when it was just an industry event, and it was just like everybody there was super passionate. And that's, I think, where esports has the opportunity, exactly what you're saying, of building events that bring people together in real life. So it isn't an antisocial event. It's actually a connection. Like, I have all these, I call them my Tesla friends. It's like people I'm friends with just through Tesla. And it's like, they're good friends now, and it's like the same can be with video games if done correctly. So I do think that's the next level for brands like Call of Duty, to make this something real for people in real life.
And I also, Sharon, to your earlier point, I really do think someone like yourself and TheWrap should write about this, because the way I look at it, 10 years ago, I worked at a telecommunications company, and the big sea change on Wall Street from an investment perspective was 10 years ago, people were leaving traditional media for social media. And the folks that figured that out early did transformationally well. What I can unequivocally tell you, as someone who has a company that communicates with so many young people people now are leaving social media for the new social network, as Ross said, which is gaming. And I'm still surprised that this hasn't cottoned on as much as it should, because I'll give you an example. Not only am I the CEO of Enthusiast, I'm also officially the oldest person in my company. So
I had to hire somebody so that wouldn't be my case too.
Yeah, it's a whole new thing managing these young folks. But my CFO is 35. He just got married, and at his wedding were 3 of his best friends who he'd never met in person. He'd only ever met them over the Xbox console.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
That's what's happened.
I've heard the same exact story many times. So what Adrian is saying is very, very real.
Oh my God, I'm so old now. I don't know what to do. I've gotten so old. No, I think your point is really valid.
Because that is really a shift, because gaming was a place that we always talked about toxic culture and anti-women culture. Like, I think we're not going to explore that today, but those of you who read me will know that that's a topic close to my heart, of having a place where you're not harassing women. As gaming has moved out beyond this core and become so widespread, is that what has shifted this, or has it been that the game designers have built in a different fail safes or things to create a culture that is consciously different? Is it just like the fact that it's bigger?
I think it's just a good reporting system. Like, if people harass people, you just report them.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was just I'll keep it short. I would say it's what Ross said. I think it's many different things converging at once, right? Like, there's never one silver bullet to prevent, toxicity and culture, right? We haven't figured that one out, let alone in one particular industry. But I think everybody's doing their part. It starts to aggregate into something. Like, as somebody who clearly has a very public-facing, high-impact job, as a woman and a minority, and I didn't come from the traditional esports world, I was expecting all the negativity. And not to say it doesn't exist, it's just, I think a lot of times you hear about like the vocal minority or the bad apples, and it writes this story that isn't necessarily at all true, where the vast majority of people that I interact with, players who are all male, and mostly male owners and coaches and GMs and fans,
right,
are as supportive of me being here as
totally.
Anyone, right? But we don't talk about that.
Gaming can't grow if women aren't involved. Like, you can't have an industry that only serves half the people, right? And women have become very active gamers, and especially casual gamers, and they won't admit it as freely as men, but they do, and they play a lot. And so I think that market's a great market too. Like, you want diversity in your markets. There's only upside to that. But I do have one request, since I have you on this thing. I'd love to be able to set it so I didn't have to play with 8-year-olds. So, it's like when you talk about it as a social platform, like, sometimes I'm playing and it'll be a bunch of people my age, and it's super fun. Like, you meet new people and you talk, and it's people all over the country or the world. But then sometimes I'm on and it's like a bunch of 8-year-olds fighting, and I'm like, dude, like, can I just be in the adult game? If you could set something like that, I'd be really, really stoked.
That's actually a strong conversation. And then Yoshio, please go, because the community is so loud. It's actually something that I love about it. I felt in traditional sports, we were so successful almost that we didn't need to hyper listen. We didn't need to hyper pivot, because it's just so established. The NFL is so good as it is. But it's so different with esports that, like, if the community is not happy with a decision, you're going to know it 26 seconds later.
Oh yeah,
from places all over the world, and you need to be okay with being ready to be agile to that moment. I think the same is going to happen, Ross, with your point. I think the community is starting to pipe up across many games about how they would like to gather in game, and I think
social media.
Right.
So if you put me in a group of people my age, like, I would play more, and then you could target from an advertiser perspective more.
Sure, exactly.
There are mechanics that are being put in place. So, a few years ago, to Sharon's point, even right now in gaming, it's such a wide audience, and some of these communities, every community is going to have a certain level of toxicity. But in terms of the safeguards, there have been some tech fail safes, but also in the reporting mechanisms, as Ross mentioned. But the other thing is, every major game worth its salt today, when it comes to their esports community, community, they actually invest directly in what we call community management. So they are hiring people full time who are not only moderators to say, hey, this is a bad apple who's saying really horrible, sexist, misogynistic things. Get that guy out of here. But on top of that, they are listening in real time to all the feedback from the community and actually piping that feedback back into the game developers to say, hey, it would be cool. The community is saying we would love to see this view or this spectator mode in the next version of Call of Duty. Or is there a way to do online matchmaking so that Ross doesn't have to play with lame 8-year-olds? There are things like that that are also happening in real time that we weren't seeing 5 years ago.
I have an 8-year-old, so I know.
I want to circle back to one other thing.
Who's not allowed to play Call of Duty, by the way.
That's right. I was hoping somebody was going to say that.
No, he's not. And 8-year-olds do play, and I'm like, your mom lets you play this, and they're like,
they can watch CDL. That's family friendly if they want to watch the league. But go ahead.
I want to go back to one other point that
my wife doesn't like shooting.
That Yoshio, exactly. That's why she's so cool.
I said, you know how we got this house, honey? Call of Duty.
Okay, I want to talk about the sustainability of this growth that we're talking about. So Yoshio brought this up. It's understandable that during COVID, when everybody's in their homes and can't go to work, can't go to school, can't go play live sports, that gaming is going to take up a bigger space of people's time and attention, because that's all we're competing for today, right? In the entertainment and media space, and then everything else, eating, sleeping, etc. So what do you guys, how do you look at that? I mean, is this, Yoshio seemed to be saying that this is sustainable, that this is some kind of permanent leap up in attention, in sort of the primacy of gaming. I'd love to test that with you guys. How do you feel about that? And what suffers as a result? Like, is it because we're not watching less TV or less, Netflix?
For me, in my world, the most important and compelling statistic that I believe answers this question is the fact that 70% of Gen Z males, and the number is increasing pro rata with women, believe that gaming is a core part of their identity. This isn't a hobby. This isn't a form of entertainment. This is their method of self-expression. This is how they present themselves to their peer group. And as we've discussed, it's their social network. The connection between young people and gaming is so visceral that the staying power of that, think of gaming for these young people today like music, right? I externally identified through my music choices when I was in high school. That's how visceral gaming is. So that to me is the most powerful statistic for longevity.
Does that compete with being an Avengers fan or a Spider-Man fan, or does that add
complementary?
I think it's highly complementary.
Yeah, I would agree. One example of that is, take Call of Duty, for example. One of the appeals to driving their esports platform forward was because there's so many celebrities, capital C, I mean, A-list names across Hollywood, music, sports, media, you name it, who, when we don't know them for what they're famous for, are playing Call of Duty obsessively. So there's this appeal to be able to converge those different mainstream media markets just through influencers, as we've traditionally thought of them, not the new streamer of tomorrow. And they're all just sort of, it's very fluid, And so we've had events where on a stage there was an NFL, star, an NBA star, A-list blockbuster celebrity, and a best-selling hip-hop artist, and they're all just playing Call of Duty. Yeah. And they came out to the LA event because they love what CDL represents to them. To Adrian's point, which is so well put, it is who they are. It didn't feel like an appearance. They were happy to be there because that's their people, right?
But I think from Sharon's point is like, let's say you're a kid and you go to school and you come home from school and you have all these choices of whether it's Netflix or Peacock or video games, or I play guitar, God forbid you do something physical or work out. You have you have like 5 or 6 hours. So like in the old days, I was a communications major. It was like people would spend 8 hours a day on television. So like they'd get home at 5 or 6 and they'd watch TV, and there were 4 channels, you know? So now between social media, YouTube, I mean, so what I think is that audiences are incredibly fragmented now among so many different places that it's that much more challenging for advertisers. And then where you can aggregate eyeballs becomes that more powerful. So the advantage that gaming has over Netflix is active versus passive. Okay. So when you're gaming, it's an active activity. Your brain has to be engaged. A lot of times I don't game after work because I'm too tired and I can't beat these kids. Like I can't, you know, I can kick their butt like first thing in the morning, you know what I mean? But like, so I think that when you want to be active, gaming is actively like getting your brain working. And when you want to kind of like not do anything, you sit back and you watch, you know, garbage television or this or that. So I think gaming
but again, I think
that other advertising, other forms of media.
The point that you made, Ross, the active versus passive, is such an important point here, which is why gaming is winning out. But it doesn't just limit itself to the actual playing of the game. The other thing is that we were, you know, in my mid-40s, 20 years ago, we were all passive consumers of content. The way young people consume content today is very active. That's why short form, user generated, I'm uploading photos, I'm uploading videos to my own YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. People are active in their own content consumption. They're not passive anymore. Creation. They're very active participants in their content choices. And that's a really important point. I'm so glad you brought it up. And it's why gaming is winning on every level.
Go ahead, Joanna.
It's a great point, the active and passive. I also would say esports to me is a new way to be a passive fan of a game. Right. Yeah. I will never have enough time, Sharon. I'd love to take you a post-pandemic at some point to a live event, right? Because you may just walk out a fan of something the way that you are a fan if you go to see an NBA game or a Broadway play, whatever.
If you convert Sharon to a gamer, I'd be super impressed.
Right. And we didn't play, and we're not any better for it on a participatory level, but we just engaged as spectators in a highly interactive way. That is huge to grow gaming beyond just those who have enough time and enough capability to spend a ton of hours actually, you know, interacting in the traditional sense. So that's just one thing about active and passive is I find that they're not mutually exclusive, especially when you throw esports in. And then secondly, I'd build on just what, you know, Adrian and Ross have said in that I think it's also about winning because now it's a multi-entertainment and multi-platform brand. So Fortnite can show up anywhere. Call of Duty can show up in a Netflix series, on a stage, in a podcast, and on YouTube and on Twitch, all on the same day. And no one would care. And if I have an affiliation to the brand that is Call of Duty, I'm probably going to follow that journey wherever we want to take it versus being limited to one distribution platform. So that's just another reason I think gaming is going to come out on top here.
That's a
great point. It's a great point. It's a multi-platform business, and that's why you hit so many people with it.
The other thing...
Go ahead, Adrian.
No, I was just going to say, this is such a great discussion. The other word that is propelling esports, the other advantage esports has over any other sport in the world is access. If you are a fan of our Call of Duty team, the Seattle Surge, you can spend as much time as you want with your favorite player because you can see them stream on Twitch. You can watch their YouTube channel. You can imagine if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan and you had that much access to Tom Brady. You could, instead of watching the CBS feed, you could watch the Tom Brady cam and see him in the huddle, see him with Giselle eating breakfast on game day, see him in the dressing room with the team.
That's a great idea, by the way. That's a great idea.
I think, we've stumbled onto another idea here. But the level of access you have as an esports fan, is unlike anything else anywhere. And that is incredibly powerful. And people would kill for it in traditional sports.
But that connective tissue that you touched on, it's not just about active versus passive or access versus lack of access. But if you think about it from an esports perspective, okay, I may not be able to do all the things that some crazy cyber athlete who's been playing games since the age of 3 and is in his or her prime at the age of 17 in South Korea can do. But I feel like I could. Whereas if I watch LeBron James, he's 6'8", 250, dunk a basketball. I'm 5 foot nothing, soaking wet. I'm not going to be able to do that. So there's also the relatability aspect of it where, I still can't really do what the cyber athletes
I tell my
can
kid
do.
this all the time. He wants to be a basketball player, and I'm like,
there's a relatability aspect to it.
I'm like, you're probably not going to grow that much, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm Jewish, you know, we just don't have that many people in the league. So he asked me how many Jews were in the basketball league, and I was like 0. You know, we used to have Jordan Farmar. So he goes back to Minecraft. I was like, better job. It's a better job.
That's such a powerful point that you make, Yoshio, because it's relatability, and I can go onto the court that LeBron is playing on. If you really think about that, right? Like, I can watch I've seen it, 100 times over just in our inaugural.
Well, and they play with the public too.
Yeah,
you know,
I just watched the best in the world play on that map. I cheered. It's done. I go take a bathroom break. I load up my own Call of Duty, and I can go play exactly what they just played. Same rules, same court. Nothing is different. So
and there is a learning mechanism too. You learn from watching those people, and it's helpful. And people watch these videos to be better at the games. You know, like there's a part of that, like the how-to part of it, that's actually quite powerful. That I think is underestimated. We want to get better at the game, so people watch the streamers and the esports to learn.
The Let's Plays, Ross, on YouTube are, I think, the number 3 or number 4 most viewed type of content on YouTube right now is those Let's Play tutorials. So yeah, there's that dichotomy.
Number 1 on YouTube, like how-to videos.
Exactly.
I wanted to I'll do programming. I want to tee up some questions. I want not to interrupt this live conversation, but I know that we have some questions from the audience and want to be able to make sure we have time to take them. But Yoshio, finish your point.
Oh no, I was finished with my thought.
Okay, all right. I wouldn't mind turning to some questions because I don't want to run out of time. Do we have a question to tee up? I'm going to have to pause, and we have a moderator who's holding those storing those up for us. And also wanted to just let the audience listening know that we are taking questions, so put them in the queue. Okay, so here's from Danny Goldblatt. Does community really matter? Madden is getting killed in the reviews, and hardcore fans are upset about how franchise mode has been ignored, but the sales were still through the roof. I think that's going to be more meaningful to you guys than to me.
I think it goes. Oh, go ahead, Adrian.
No, Yoshio, please.
Yeah, my answer is quick. Johanna talked about this a few minutes ago on a different but related point. You have a vocal minority. Sometimes the vocal minority can sink the ship for a game. So we've seen it before with Star Wars Battlefront 2 with loot boxes, but there are other times. No, and yeah, so the quality, that was a big part of it as well, right? In cases like Madden, it's been evergreen for a reason, where even though you have this vocal minority of folks that are complaining, and these are legitimate complaints.
I think they're legit too.
They are legitimate, but I think part of why sports games have actually outperformed is back to that COVID effect of, people have this pent up demand. They weren't sure if there was going to be a real NFL season. So a lot of folks were picking up a copy of the game. So there's a substitution aspect, but the vocal minority, they are vocal, but they don't necessarily represent the entire broad swath of the community.
And I think they're mostly angry as they're tired of paying just for basically player upgrades. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's football. Like, what more can you do? The game is so real, it's like, so I think they pay because they want the new players anyways.
I think generally, community is everything. And the most overused word about gaming is authenticity, but it's also the most important. And I think community is everything.
I want to ask, we're about to see a whole bunch of games roll out in the next 2
Yeah,
months.
we got a big couple months in gaming coming here. I'm
Yeah,
very
I don't want to ignore that. I know we were talking about like streaming and esports and all that stuff, but I mean, it's going to be like a massive holiday season. What do we think? We can move the question, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty bold up on it. You know, not only with next gen, you got PS5 and Xbox Series X. It's not just about the new hardware this time around, Sharon, but also we're seeing more innovation in terms of prosumer business models and pricing. So Xbox, for example, they have an all-access pass where for $35 a month for 2 years, you can get the hardware, but you also get Xbox Live Gold. You get all these things bundled in, so more of a cable or smartphone subscription model. So we're seeing the barriers to entry for gamers at all levels. That accessibility piece that Adrian talked about in a different light, but in terms of this holiday,
you're talking about the people who are just getting into gaming. That it's
If you want to buy a console, you might not have $600. It's a recession, but to pay $35 a month, you get the console, you get a whole bunch of games. You
get 200 games with Xbox.
Yeah, it's a great. Microsoft is making smart moves right now.
Well, we got to get Sarah Bond on here because we had her last time. Got to get
and we're along Microsoft.
Yeah, amazing. How does that sort of affect? Okay, we have another question. Okay, let's take another question. Where does I didn't mean to get to this, so thanks Ricardo Pires for asking this one. Where does virtual reality fit into the future of gaming as a social media platform? Will it eventually replace traditional console gaming, or will they be complementary to each other? Great question.
And I would add AR to that too.
Right.
Okay, AR too.
I mean, I think VR has issues, mostly that have to do with the way it affects your brain long term. So if you're going to game for more than 30 minutes, I think VR has certain physiological issues that haven't been worked out because it's just too real. And maybe training people to kill people for too many hours a day is kind of a bad idea. On the other hand, I think
after 30 years,
differently, AR is very real now. It's pretty good. I think there's a lot of opportunity in AR with gaming, though. In a lot of different ways, it could be used.
I think it'll be inverted. So to Ross's point, AR gaming has a lot of big mass market potential, whereas in VR, it's still more niche, even though gaming is one of the few killer apps in VR today. But the issue with VR, the challenge to Ricardo's question is VR hasn't yet been made social. So there are reasons for that. The headset mounted displays require a lot of technology, which means the price points are not accessible to the masses. And you have some latency issues, which can lead to nausea, but also, so for us, when we look at, could VR ever become more social, you need the price points to go down, and they're starting to. Quest 2.0 is going to be even better and more accessible. You're going to need better content. But on top of all of that, 5G will be hopefully the shapeshifter that enables more people to have VR in their homes and also have social multiplayer. Right now, VR is still very much an isolated single-player experience. And so you can't really grow that at scale unless you have a Chinese model of making VR available at theme parks, at arcades, where you're renting these pieces of equipment for 15 RMB per hour, that kind of a more accessible model. But those are some of the things that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and the only other build I would say is, because we talk about it a lot even on our side, is what problem are you trying to solve? And I don't know if VR has figured out exactly what the problem is that it's existing to solve. So it's like all this hyper potential, but I think we need to figure out still as an industry, what is the need that the consumer needs, and how does VR really enhance that? I think right now it still feels, to Yoshio's point, like niche and a little bit fad, like a nice to have, versus, man, if I don't have that as a tool in my toolkit, I'm going to fall behind.
And the equipment's bulky and uncomfortable,
Right.
Sorry, Ross, what'd you say? Say it again.
Well, the equipment's bulky and uncomfortable.
Oh, I see.
I think the biggest issue I have more is exactly what was brought up. It's a single player experience. It's not very sophisticated yet. I can't really interact with people. I think it has potential though. But I want to go back a second because there's a thought process that I've been working through, because recently a lot of the game companies, including Activision, have decided to charge more for games that they're selling up front, now $70 instead of $60, while you see the huge success of free-to-play games with the add-on buying. And then you have the subscription model. So you have 3 different types of models coming for games. And in some ways, I think it confuses the consumer. And in other ways, I think there's a lot of opportunity. How do you guys see this working itself out? Are people going to still pay $70 and be happy? I'm okay with that. But then I don't want to pay for add-ons after I pay $70. On the other hand, if I don't spend money on Modern Warfare, on Warzone, I don't have any fun. I can't dress up and all this kind of stuff. So where do you see the pay models going from here, and what's most lucrative for the companies?
Good question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think, I have a unique perspective. Obviously, we have a senior person from Activision here as well. So what I would say is my vantage point. One of the things that is sometimes the hardest question to answer from investors or people who want stakeholders, they're concerned about the fickle nature of the games and how people can cycle in and out of them. And obviously, Yoshio had a fantastic slide in his presentation that spoke to some longevity to the game. And I think the biggest friend to the longevity argument is the free-to-play model, because it's shifting the economics to within the game. And we all hear the eye-popping stats about these currency transactions within the game. And so free-to-play for me is a great thing, because I believe that as publishers make more of their money from within the game, those games are incented to stick around.
Yeah, it's certainly been great for Fortnite. I think they do 50 million a month just in-game purchases,
It's more like 300 million a month.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of the
My God.
God, why are we talking about the movie business in this?
What was I reading?
Why are we talking here? This is crazy.
That's
and
crazy
and then
number.
you have
That's
properties
crazy.
like on mobile, like Free Fire, that a lot of people still don't know about, that is bananas, and mostly in LATAM. But there's just so much happening across these platforms. And then to your point and question, like, how do you monetize? I would say Call of Duty has had early days success. I don't think anyone could argue in not creating cannibalizing experiences. But you're right, Ross. I think it's so much about what content am I getting. I think these consumers are savvier and are going to continue to get savvier as far as, I don't think they'll be as confused. I think they'll be much more sort of selective. Like, do I want to go through the premium sales route? What am I getting for that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, am I really going to pay $70?
Right. What am I getting?
I could do free-to-play games. And like, as a parent, like, I signed up for the Xbox Pass because like I'm not buying my kids $60 games. They play them for like who knows how long.
Sure.
And it's like a lot of kids skip from game to game. And so like I like the subscription model for the industry. I think it's smart in a lot of ways. And you put a lot of old titles that aren't really selling anyways,
Yeah.
But the free-to-play seems to be such, like the way you did Warzone and the way you're getting people to spend money on Warzone, I think is genius, And I don't know what your numbers are, but I'm guessing they might even be better than the pay model for the Call of Duty games.
I would just say that, again, without even getting into specifics, it's been really amazing to watch the almost masterful way in which those things came to the market and all boats sort of rose, which was the hope, but the strategy really won because the differentiating content experience you're getting, there's a reason to buy premium that's different than there's a reason to go through free to play. And then lastly, again, ever the business model of esports nerd, the free to watch. This is a totally different business model in esports now that isn't going to be as much about what we do with the kind of transactions we're talking about here, albeit esports MTX is really important to us, but it's also about how we monetize the way that traditional sports media companies have monetized the passive, more spectator experience, which is aggregating audience, media distribution deals, consumer products, sponsorships, totally different way to monetize around Call of Duty that wouldn't have existed if we hadn't.
Well, the other thing you did in Warzone, which I thought was really smart, was you got me to buy the other Call of Duty pre-order through the ads you're running on Warzone. And you like shoved them in my face, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. And then it was like, why not? Pre-order, I'm gonna buy it anyway, And so you pulled a $70 sale out of a free-to-play game.
Yep.
Sounds to me like there's so much at the movie business, which we spent day one talking about, which isn't really
what movie business.
Yeah,
Well,
we love the movie business here at TheWrap and elsewhere around the world. We don't want to see it go away. We love having gaming, but I was just going to say that it feels like there are lessons that the movie business could learn from all the innovation.
Absolutely. The movie business needed the pandemic to get rid of the model that doesn't work. I mean,
but it's hard to kill it too. It's like,
they're killing it fine just now. The theater business will never be the same again. So expecting to make a $250 million movie and pull in $1 billion at the box office might be ridiculous for the time being.
Sharon, just on my side, real fast. I know we're running short on time. We work with all the major game publishers, platforms, developers, etc. A lot of the major esports companies out there, but a lot of our growth is actually coming from non-endemics, from movies, home entertainment. The TV and music companies are coming to us because they are looking at, to Johanna's point, the innovation in business models and accessibility, free to watch as an example, and saying we need to do more of what these gaming and esports companies are doing.
Right. And from a music perspective, I have a music company as well, and we're actually, the way we look at it is, how do we get our music in these games? There's got to be a better way for musicians to monetize their music through video games, because they're all gamers too, actually, and it's wonderfully complementary,
But the other significant thing really quickly about free to play and the success that Fortnite and others have had with it is, remember, music has never ebbed in popularity in people's lives, but for 20 years, young kids grew up thinking they didn't have to pay for it. There is no similar impediment in the video game industry. It is understood that if Ross's kid wants something in a game, Dad, can I have your credit card? And that's an incredible difference between the music industry and this industry. That is very, very positive.
You're assuming he asks.
You get the monthly surprise. You get the monthly surprise.
Well, folks, we're actually out of time. This has been a really rocking conversation. I just want to summarize a few points that I heard here today about why gaming has taken this huge leap forward in the last 6 months. The issues are not just the fact that people are stuck at home. Okay, that's an opportunity, but it's relatability, I'm hearing, it's access, it's as a stand-in for social media, that's a safe environment, and it's multi-platform. These are some, but not all.
And community.
Community, very important.
Okay, community. Thank you for underscoring that. So this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Thank you to each one of you for bringing such great ideas to the table. I feel like I want to do this again in a year, because this was like such a great
year. I think we should do it next week. I mean,
I'm in, Ross. I'm in.
There's a huge opportunity in this area, just huge.
I'm in for a live game whenever we can. I'm with you.
With me. Special guest, VVIP.
Amazing. All right, thank you.
We need an over 50 league. We need an over 50 league.
Yourself, Ross.
I'm not 50 yet, but I will be eventually.
All right. For all of us those who are watching, we've got 2 more panels coming up in an hour, one on podcasting, and then my chat with the Social Dilemma writer and director, Jeff Orlovsky. Grab the link for that in your daily itinerary or in the chat box below. Thank you so much to everybody, and we'll see you at the next session of The Grill.